Hello, everyone. Thank you for visiting my channel, Educational Norm. I work as an educational consultant, which means that I have the opportunity to interact and visit with many teachers across Ohio and beyond. Those interactions have driven me to tell their stories and their ideas on education. The goal of Educational Norm is to provide an informational network that focuses on positive aspects of education, the people preparing students for the future of our world. Join us each week for a new interview, and please subscribe and share the channel with others that you think may enjoy the program. Thank you and enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone. Today we have August Ost, who is currently the superintendent of Summerfield Schools in Michigan. Before becoming the superintendent of Summerfield Schools, August was a principal in Dundee Schools, which, if you're an outdoors fan, you know there's a Cabela's there. He was an elementary principal for 8 years, the middle school principal for 1 year. Prior to that, he served as the at-risk director and taught grades 5 through 8 for at-risk students. He's also been a teacher in a fourth, a fifth, and a seventh grade classroom. Holy smokes, you've been through the range. He also has been a coach for basketball in the middle school and for the JV. He is currently coaching seventh grade travel ball and also a varsity assistant for basketball. But he's also done JV baseball, youth baseball. I think basically, if there's a sport, you've coached it, and if there's a grade level, you've taught it. So, welcome to the show, August.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. Coaching kind of is what got me rolling down the path that we've taken. So, I keep giving back in that way, but it's definitely a joy, and thank you for having me today.
Well, not a problem. I asked August because I knew August when he was in high school. His mom worked at the schools for a while there. So I've seen August grow from a high school student. I don't think I was there when you were in middle school, from a high school student until, now taking this position. So it's been great to watch your growth and your movement in education. And I think that's where I'd like to start is just from the time I knew you in high school, give me a short synopsis of your educational pathway to get where you're at now.
Yeah, and then I just can't explain how fast that goes too. Like I remember those
Right.
days, but it's just been a blur to get to where we are now. So yeah, in high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do in college. I was thinking more of the sports marketing, sports management route. But Jeff Turner, he was my high school basketball coach. He reached out the year after I graduated, and he's like, "Hey, do you and another kid, still a buddy of mine, Jared Carner, do you want to coach basketball, middle school basketball for us?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why not?" I was going to Eastern Michigan at the time. I'm like, that sounds like a great time. So I think by the end of that first season, I'm like, okay, maybe education's the route I want to go. It was just being around and forming the relationships with kids and just that piece and what coaching brings that kind of shifted me to go that route. And then I never looked back.
Well, I'm going
Um,
to interrupt you because I think that sports marketing piece comes because of Jared, because that's what Jared was doing as well.
yeah, no, he
Is
worked
it?
for the Tigers for a while.
Yep.
We were both kind of going the same route for a while. Um, but I had that pull back to education. Jared, he still works. He works selling in the sports field still. That's just his calling, and that's where he's always been.
Right.
I kind of got pulled the education route, and I've loved it. Actually, when I graduated from Eastern in '07, Eastern Michigan in '07, Michigan economy was rough.
Hmm.
So my first teaching job, and we didn't even talk about this when we were talking a little bit about my history. It was at Archer Lodge Middle School in Clayton, North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
So got married, moved to North Carolina, and then Dundee Middle School called. I know that was our honeymoon, right?
I
North
did not know
Carolina.
that.
Yeah. Dundee called and like, hey, we have this at-risk director job. It was new to the district. Would you consider moving back for it? And all of our families here. I'm a big family guy. My wife, she's big into family. Her family lives just south of us. Mine lives right down the road. So it wasn't really even a question. So felt horrible. Archer Lodge Middle School was a brand new school. Felt horrible kind of walking back from that commitment. But Michigan is where we were from. Michigan is where our hearts were. So we made that change, and then you named it. A lot of grades, a lot of coaching, a lot of shifting things around. Love teaching, but the elementary at the time, there was more principals in that district than my years of teaching. So I wasn't ready to be done teaching, but at the same time, I'm like, man, these teachers and these kids deserve better. They deserve consistency. We're
Right.
sick of the next guy up, the next guy up. So it's that just wanting to provide a little bit of a stable environment that pulled me into administration. And I mean, I loved it. Elementary principal, though, hands down, most gratifying job in the world. I think you're a rock star if you're an
Right.
elementary principal.
Right, without a doubt. And it is very different. At the middle school, there's more discipline. There's a lot more going on in that realm. And, kids are developing, so they're testing boundaries. Elementary kids are just happy to be there.
Yeah.
Usually. There are times where they're not, but they're just a fun group of people to be around. That's for sure. You can't, if you
Yeah.
don't smile during the day, there's something wrong.
Oh yeah. And if you're having a bad day, walk in the cafeteria at lunchtime, you leave a different person.
Yeah, they want you
You
to
have
sit
food
with
on your
you.
pants, but you
Yeah.
leave a different person.
Well, and that's funny because when I was assistant principal and you were in the high school, we shared a cafeteria, and that was not a pleasant experience at all because we just crammed as many people as we could
Yeah.
into that little cafeteria with short ceilings, and Mr. Borgsat would walk around with his earplugs in so he couldn't hear everybody. It was a great experience. It was a lot of fun. So I didn't know about your time in North Carolina, but I know family's big for you, and I know Michigan's a big part of your life. But also just that relationship piece that you mentioned is so important. So how did your time with working with the at-risk students inform your educational philosophy and how you approach kids?
Yeah, I think it really I was very fortunate growing up. I mean, I could show up, and for the most part, I mean, I had a pretty good experience. I was successful without really struggling academically. Having that experience, and I can say the same thing. We could talk about special education in a minute if the conversation goes to it. But working with at-risk kids and seeing that they don't want to not do well, they don't want to cause issues. If they are causing issues in class, it's likely connected to the fact that maybe they're struggling and they're looking for an out, so they don't have to do the content that they're just not connecting with. They don't want to be in a position where they're struggling. They want help, but then again, we're talking middle school kids. Middle school kids oftentimes want help, but they don't want others to see that they're getting help. So
Right.
you just got to be. I mean, it's definitely an art, man. Supporting them, finding out what it's going to take to help them to be successful, but having strong enough relationships that they're not embarrassed, they're not um, feeling like their peers are looking negatively upon them because they are getting that support. I think it really opened my eyes to teaching kids and meeting them where they're at, not just the one size fits all instruction that I think if I go back to my days in middle school, even high school learning, I mean, a lot of it was one size fits all. I mean, a lot of whole group
Right.
instruction. I'm not a whole group guy, and I probably contribute that to my time as an at risk teacher.
I do think that when you work with kids that need the extra attention in learning in and of itself, the relationship piece that you mentioned over and over again is huge because they have to trust you first.
Mhm.
And if they don't trust you, they're not going to give you that time of day to be able to work with them long enough to make an impact. So obviously with your experience, and you also have that personality, August, you can get along with pretty much everybody. So I think that's a benefit when it comes to working with kids as well, is that personality. So knowing that when you are now in the position you're in, how do you use that to hire your teachers? What do you look for in a teacher with that, is coming to you looking for a job?
Yeah, no, great question. And I think my mindset, especially towards the end of my time as a principal, it really changed to hiring based on personality, based on your ability to make connections, more so than what you know.
Mhm.
You can teach, you can learn the content, right? We can teach you or we can support you to being a strong math teacher, but we can't always make somebody that doesn't form relationships or doesn't go in with like a team first attitude. I mean, I'm big into collaboration, working together, getting involved in the community. You can't make people want to do that if that's not in their DNA. So we'd rather have those individuals that their brains are wired that way. They want to be a part of the team. They want to work together. They are coachable. They do have positive attitudes, and then we work on the content.
I think that being an athlete like you were, I think you understand team a lot better than somebody that wasn't part of a team. And I believe that's the case. Anybody that was like in a band or a choir, they have to work together to make things, you're not always the star, and there's a role that you play. And how does that look? So I'm sure, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, I'm sure now that you're at Summerfield, that building the culture is a huge piece of what you do. So how do now that you are in that role of running a whole district, how do you get the culture? And not that Summerfield was a bad culture prior to you getting there. I think that the superintendent was there for a long time, if I remember correctly. So I'm sure that there was a lot of um, good culture things going on, but you're the new guy. How do you create the culture that you're looking for?
Yeah, no, great question. I think that I'm not there yet. So my first time in Summerfield was early August, early to mid-August. So I came in just before the start of the school year. Anybody that's new in a role knows you don't go in and like you don't go in swinging, right?
Right.
You take a learning. I'm on my learning tour. I think I've heard previous superintendents call it their learning tour. You're right, and I'm going to even go sideways on this for just a minute. There was two superintendents in Summerfield for over 40 years. So
Wow.
two that were there 23 years, 24 years. One of them actually just joined our Board of Education. Appreciate the opportunity because he has the historical knowledge. I get to keep him. I mean, he's
That's
a
awesome.
huge asset. After they left, Mr. Hewitt was the most recent one. Mr. Sala, who's now at Addison Schools, came in for 3 years. So there was a period there where there was maybe a shorter term, even though I think 3 years is longer than the average
Yes, it
superintendency.
is.
So I guess I can call it long term. But then me. So you're right. There's a lot of strong, established traditions in the district. When two people kind of run the show for as long as Mr. Hugendorn and Mr. Hewitt did, that kind of happens.
Mhm.
So now that I'm coming in, right, I look at it, listening to her, learning about Summerfield, not trying to do too much too soon. Like I'm a guy, I'm ready to go. Like I'm always ready just to what's next, what's next, what's next. Sometimes you got to tap the brakes and what did Mr. Manuzak, a former superintendent of mine, used to say, sometimes you have to crawl before you can run, or you have to walk before you can run. That's where I see myself right now. Continuing to take it in, seeing what needs to be done. And then the other part, and you mentioned this a minute ago, you were going this way, and this quote came up in my mind. The whole quote of people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Mhm.
Like right now, that's kind of where I'm at. I want our staff at Summerfield to know that they can count on me, that I care about them, I care about where we're at, and I feel like that's the first building block, and then we can start taking some steps in a couple different directions.
Well, and there's two other things that I think are working positively for you in regards to them seeing you as the leader long term because you're young and young compared to myself. I'll just put that in quotes, young, and you are dedicated to that area. So there's a very good chance you could be the next person that's, not knowing what the future holds, but you could be there for a very long time. And what does that look like down the road? And if he's going to start something, we know in education sometimes we don't carry through because of change of leadership. But I think you have a very positive view in that because of, coming in and being a local guy and being dedicated to a school. So, the long-term plans I think will come about because they trust you're going to be there. And again, I'm not putting you in a spot like I'm committing to 23 years because
Right, right.
I would never do that to anybody. But do you see that in education in the past where you would have a person come in and maybe even a principal role or a lead teacher role and say, this is what we're going to do. And then, a year later they're gone. Do you see that a lot in education? And that's what you're countering, I would guess.
Yeah, oh my gosh, for sure. I mentioned a minute ago that I had more principals than I had years of service. At the same time, I had more superintendents that I had years of service.
Hmm.
There was a time, I mean, I don't remember the statistics anymore, but I had like 9 superintendents in my first 6 years in education. It was insane. So what that does is, I mean, people form islands.
Hmm.
They learn to wait you out. You want to go down this road. They're like,
Right.
why would I go down this road? You're gonna be gone in 6 months. And when they were correct over and over and over again. So that was one of my first year as principal. That was something that was legit. They were waiting me out and they had to realize like, hey, I'm not going anywhere. 8 years is a long haul.
Yeah, it is. Well, I was in the same boat because I think at one time when I was at Dundee, we had three superintendents within a year and a half, and we were still paying two of them on top of the one we had working for us. So it was
Yeah.
a carousel there for a while. But I know that when Mr. Manuzak came in, he was actually a student teacher when I was in Blissfield.
Oh,
Yeah, long time ago.
yeah.
He brought stability because he was there for longer than most. Let's just put it that way. I don't know how long he was there, but you're right. Superintendent jobs usually are very short-lived. And I think part of that is just because the age of the people that are applying for those are older, looking for different.
Mhm.
So what drew you to that superintendent role so young?
So I'll think back to one of my first answers I gave you today was I wasn't really ready. I wasn't really ready to leave teaching, but I wanted to have the consistency for the building, and that is what led me to becoming the elementary principal. So there's a part even in the introduction that I left out when I was kind of recapping my history and education with you, and there was 2 years, one year, it all becomes a blur.
It's
2 years I served as the assistant superintendent in Dundee.
oh,
So when Mr.
okay.
Manuzak was there, a lot of economic growth in that area. So
Hmm.
I mean, population was increasing. We were doing a lot of good things for a while, and not that they're not now, but when that happened, he added an assistant superintendent. So I really wasn't ready to leave the elementary principal position. But in a matter of 2 weeks, Mr. Manuzak announced that he was leaving the district to take a position in Washtenaw County. Miss Winnell, our assistant superintendent, announced she was taking a superintendent position in Dansville, north of us in Michigan.
Yeah, yep.
So I was in that position again where I was talking to our high school principal, and I'm like, gosh, I have the best job in the world. Every time you get one, I've always been fortunate. It's always become the best job. I love what I do. But I'm like, I have the elementary principal position. I really enjoy this. We're doing good things. But my biggest fear is a new outsider coming in and taking the superintendent role, a new outsider coming in and taking the assistant superintendent role, and two individuals not having the pulse of our community. I mean,
Mhm.
we have to represent our communities, and we've seen what happens in districts when that's not the case. So I was fearful of two new people coming in without the history and the just the caring for the district and the community. So
Mhm.
I threw my name out for the assistant superintendent role. I knew I wasn't ready for a superintendent. Not having that secondary experience, I knew I had to go the assistant superintendent route first. Um, so I did that for a couple of years. And then eventually there's like a little switch that flips and it's like, I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready.
Right.
So wasn't looking everywhere. Again, we mentioned family multiple times during this conversation. I wasn't looking to drive 45 minutes or something like this. My kids are young, 16, 15, and 13. So Summerfield opened up and my wife and I had some conversations on it and we're like, you know what? It, let's go. I mean, if I don't get it, I'm in a great spot. If I do get it, okay, that's what's next.
Right. I love that. And the family piece, that is that's what drove me to Dundee actually was family as well. Because I was driving 72 miles one way for work at one point. Then I got out of education for probably 3 months, and then Dundee called me and said, "Hey, we have an assistant principal job. Do you want it?" I said, "I really don't want to be an assistant principal. I love teaching." So, but I thought it was the way to get back into teaching or back into education. So I took it and I actually did a dual role there in Dundee, which was assistant principal 5-8 and K-12 curriculum director at the same time, which that was not a good situation. As you well know, the assistant principal job is a daily thing where it overtakes anything that's long term. When you have 12
Yeah.
kids sitting in your office for a playground fight, then you deal with that. And it was all over basketball, but
Yep.
that's how
Very
things
important.
work. It's very important things. But you had to deal with that, and they were sitting on the meat test boxes, and it was funny. And I got paid 63 grand to do both jobs, so it was like, okay, time to move on. So after 2 years, I said, you need to split these things up, or I can't do them. And
Yeah.
they weren't willing to do it at that point. So I went back in the classroom, which I loved. I love going back in the classroom. Teaching is what I really love doing. But then I think a year later, they split them up. They offered me one or the other. And I said, no, I'm pretty happy doing what I'm doing now. But I had to explain why I went back in the classroom. Are you sure it was your choice and not theirs? I said, yeah. I wasn't a great administrator, but I wasn't that bad.
Right. And you wanted to be in the classroom and
Yeah.
that job, and you got to set people up for success. And that's not one people can't be successful doing those. Those are two huge jobs. And you're right. The day to day as an assistant principal, no
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. So I teach a class at Kent State. And I asked that question about what do you look for when you hire people because of them. They're nervous about what the job market's like and what they hear about teaching. What can you say positive about what's going on in education, especially in Summerfield, when you see teachers, and you and I both know the reward is huge when you're reaching kids. But what do you see as the teaching atmosphere at Summerfield right now?
The Summerfield I think everywhere, not even Summerfield specific. There, I remember when we were having job postings and I had a stack this thick. There were 300 applicants, and you would go through and like it was almost like playing darts. If
Mhm.
you know what I mean? To go through
Yes,
so many and find out who's the best, you can't tell on paper. So you did your best to narrow it down the best that you can. We're at the point now. Um, I think the attitude is good, the culture is good, the atmosphere is good, but man, has the times changed. Like we have a third grade job right now that we just moved a retired teacher who was working in with our at-risk kids in for possibly the remainder of the school year because there's only like one or two applicants coming through.
Mm,
So we really want to make sure we're being patient and looking like I'm always looking long term, right? Like I
right,
want to leave this place better than I found it. Not that I have
right,
intentions of leaving, but you always leave things better than
right,
you found it. I don't want to just take the one applicant that comes in or one of the two, and that was a mid-year posting.
right.
So we're kind of like tapping the brakes. If it's still posted, so if somebody comes in, we'll still look to fill it. But at the same time, we know that our options are probably going to be a little bit greater come June,
Hmm.
July, even a little bit before that, April, May. Um, but man, the times have truly changed when it comes to the number of applicants going into it. But
Yes.
as far as the atmosphere, I think we're really strong. As a small school, we're a small rural school. The entire district is less than 600 kids. In schools like that, man, community means everything.
Hmm.
So I think we work well. I feel like we're the hub of the community, and we're just looking for ways to maybe improve what we're doing. I know we're probably going to get there eventually. There's a couple big things on my to-do list this year, but I think we fit in well with what we're doing. We have a great staff. They work hard. They have positive attitudes. A lot of them are Summerfield graduates, which, I mean, nobody can care more than somebody that actually went through the system and graduated from it. So
Right.
very blessed.
Yeah, it is a small out in the middle of nowhere community, but it's always one of those friendly places that we would go and I wouldn't say hang out, but there was things to do there every once in a while that we would just go to Summerfield, and it was always a great situation. And like you said, rural, and it's rural. When you had those snow days, we talked about, well, I'm sure the kids still had to get up and do their chores because
Mhm.
the animals don't feed themselves. So it's that kind of community. And you have hardworking families there too, which also, is a benefit when you have those kids in class.
Yeah, and especially you leave and you see the families doing what you're doing. You go to the market down the road and you run into families. It's just you're right. Those are connections that I think that's why my passion is smaller schools such as this. I mean, Dundee was closer to 1,800 kids, and that was a good situation too. But we talk about those giant districts. I don't really have a passion for that. I mean, I like the small
Yeah.
and I like the connections.
Well, and Dundee, that growth has been pretty substantial in the last few years. It's not like it was like that all the time. It was super crowded when you were in high school, and we didn't have the new building there. But we had, I think it was 11 portables at one time when I was there, and that's a rough situation when you have that many kids packed into a small group. And now it would never go. You can't have that kind of portable situation and be safe in that
Yeah.
regard. Um, the other feature of working in a small school is that you get a chance to pretty much do everything, whether you
Mhm.
want to or not. So, how is that small school experience? I know you're the superintendent, but what else do you have your hands in on a daily basis just because of the size of the district?
Yeah, everything. I like that. I like being a part of it, and I like being in the know. Like tomorrow, just tomorrow we have our school counselor and our high school principal is running. They're running a programming conversation, talking to kids about next year because it's almost time, to start building
Hmm.
those schedules. So we have a meeting when I'm done. So this afternoon or later morning, we're going in and we're talking about class options for next year. What we're going to be offering. Thompson's Heating and Cooling, a big HVAC company. They're right
Hmm.
right out my window right now. I'm working with them to possibly bring a CTE, like a partnership, a CTE
Nice.
HVAC class to our school. Working with Sienna Heights, we're on a really the right track, I think, with them to partner with them for direct college, dual enrollment. Michigan has thanks to the Flint water crisis, there's a drinking water management plan. The maintenance director and I are currently trying to facilitate getting that put together and,
Hmm.
and figuring out how we're going to replace $60,000 worth of drinking fountains with the state grant award of $23,000. So, a little bit of an underfunded mandate there.
Right, of
Um,
course.
but I mean, just like that. I mean,
Yeah,
we have a town hall meeting. We're considering a sinking fund because we have aging facilities. So we have a town hall meeting tomorrow after the programming meeting to meet with the community about like their tolerance for a potential sinking fund.
hmm
We don't want to go too far down the road until we, start surveying our people and see what kind
right.
of support we could be looking at. But
Well,
just like that.
you also mentioned that you're coaching, you're assistant coach on the varsity basketball program, and there are very few superintendents that do that. I mean, but that's a small school atmosphere. That's what you do. Your kids are part of it. You want to be part of it. It's just fun to hear that small school mentality because you don't ask, well, you never say that's not my job. You just do it. It's
Yeah.
just what you do. I think
Right.
that's a very positive of growing up in that kind of community. It's awesome.
Right.
Um,
I hate that when people are like when a ref says I didn't it's not my call or whatever. Like if you saw it, it's your call. Like
right.
if you're here, anything is your job,
Right.
right? If it needs
I'll take out
done,
the
if the phone
trash. I'll
rings,
do
answer it. Yeah.
yeah, anything. I'll go out and do bus duty. I've been in those situations where other people won't do it. So, but it has to get done. So, if not you, who? It's
Right.
really what it comes down to. Um, you mentioned, and I'm always intrigued by this. Um, what are, what is your vision going forward? What are you trying to get done that's going to be new and exciting there in Summerfield?
Yeah. Well, CTE is definitely a passion.
Yeah.
When I was the assistant superintendent in Dundee, kind of helped bring in a firefighter course, an EMT course, drafting and design. We already had construction trades, we already had business, and we already had ag. CTE in Summerfield, we don't currently have any. So a couple of things that we're dealing with here. A declining enrollment, which schools like this, our athletic director, for example, she's told me this one of the first conversations we had. She's like, listen, my kiddo's a senior next year. Great kid. His name's Reese. Junior this year, senior next year. She's like, when Kelly's like, when Reese graduates, I don't have any more kids in this school, but I'm not moving. Like I love living in this small
Yes.
community where we don't have a lot of growth. There's no subdivisions. There's no mobile home parks. There's no apartments. There's no excuse me, condominiums. I mean, growth is definitely limited here. So when you have a aging community, once their kids age out of the school system, you lose kids in the
hmm
district. So that works. It's a blessing and a curse, right? I mean, that's
Right.
an
Right.
awesome thing. But man, to talk about limiting kids. And then the other thing too, our county, Monroe County in Michigan, we have an agreement with school of choice. Uh, One thing, in not that anybody's ever done it wrong, but Summerfield's really never capped their school of choice. If somebody wants to leave, they let them leave, even if it's over the 1% cap. And I'm all about choice. Like
hmm
parents have choices. This is not, I don't want to just make the choice for everybody. We want to do this collaboratively. But like so far this year, if a kid wanted to leave, we're like, well, can you come in first and at least talk to us? Because a lot of times the perception of a small rural school is, well, you don't have those opportunities, you don't
Right.
have those athletics, you don't have that. But one kiddo specifically, a junior this year, he called right away. His mom called back and she's like, "I'm so glad you asked us to come in. Just there's so many benefits. You can withdraw our application. So at least trying to make that effort to not sign off blindly and let everybody leave without seeing what we have to offer.
Right.
So that is that is something with the declining enrollment. Obviously, you know how per pupil works.
hmm
You're a little bit limited right there. So
Right.
excited about CTE, but trying to maybe work. I mentioned Thompson's Heating and Cooling earlier. Instead of hiring a CTE teacher, partnering with an industry that can offer us an industry professional and kind of attack it that way. So
Yeah.
work smarter, not harder, I think is
Right.
kind of the attitude on that.
Right. I, in one of my other interviews, I interviewed a superintendent of a small school here in Ohio who was superintendent of the year. And he did the survey with his kids and found out that at the time, 31% of his kids went to college. All the rest stayed and were trades or, skilled labor. So that's what he did. When they built their new school, he actually built the inside of an ambulance inside of the room, in one of the rooms, so the kids could train to be EMTs right there. And then other schools pay him to send their kids to do that program. So that is definitely a huge benefit. And I don't know, what percentage of your kids go off to college, but if they are going to be hanging around the Summerfield area, let's get them, in early and get those apprenticeships and the training that they'll need. And again, in that small community as a farming community, a lot of those kids have a lot of skill already when it comes to understanding trades. So, now you're just building on that. So EMT, heating and cooling, is there another thing in Summerfield that kids are interested in that you might be able to service?
I would love to get an ag. If are we still
Hmm.
you're still talking CTE? I would love an
Yes.
ag program.
Yeah.
Right now we have a couple kids that go to either Dundee or Whiteford to participate in their ag programs.
Hmm.
The state really eliminated a lot of the financial incentive to host CTE
Mm,
this year in this year's budget, like
really?
61C, for example. Last year in Dundee, we built a giant pole barn to be split between our construction trades and our ag classes. But like that fund that money that I'm drawing a blank that line item was scratched completely this year. So
Oh, wow.
61C is gone. So it makes it a little bit more challenging to start a program that's going to require some startup costs.
Hmm.
But that would be something I would love to eventually get to, is where we can offer an agricultural program.
Well, and that's interesting because in Ohio we went the opposite way. We actually combined the Department of Education with the Department of Workforce Development. So they are now one department. So there's a huge push for those types of programs in Ohio. So I do have other resources I'll be happy to share with you afterwards. I don't need to bore everybody with all my resource information. Um, so I'm going to move forward a little bit with what you see in teaching that's good right now. And I know you already mentioned the culture and everything else, but I'm looking at specific practices. I'm sure you get the opportunity to, especially in Summerfield, because it is small, you can see the different levels. What are your teachers doing that strategy wise that are really reaching kids at all levels?
I think we've really embraced technology, but appropriately.
Hmm.
Everything's a pendulum, right? We talked about college a few minutes ago, and then maybe more of the trades route. A few years ago, we had to send everyone to college. Now that pendulum's swinging back a little bit, where we're respecting that you can have a very admirable and successful career not going to college.
Right.
Same with technology. COVID kind of swung that pendulum all the way over, where everybody was relying on technology, and thankfully, we've seen that swing back, because we've seen what happens if a kid's on technology for 8 hours a day.
Right.
It doesn't work. So I think our teachers in this area, Summerfield specifically, have done a nice job letting that swing back and letting the technology supplement what they're doing in class, and just being a tool that they're using, not something that the kids are relying on. Now,
Right.
again, we are a small school, so we do have some kids taking online classes, whether it's through Acellus or Michigan Virtual, or Monroe Community College, Siena Heights. But when you're talking about your in-person learning, I think our teachers do a great job balancing that, and that allows them to really understand where kids are at,
Hmm.
and more easily meet them at that level. If you use technology right, I mean, you individualize everything. So kids are constantly giving information that allows the teacher to kind of see, all right, they get it, or you know
Hmm.
what, this individual might need a little more support in that area.
Right.
Definitely think that's an area that we're doing well. I think our science teacher in Summerfield, they were going the extra mile. I mean, people are happy to be back. We're a couple years removed from COVID now, but we're so happy to have kids in front of us
Yes.
that, I mean, she just started, they gutted the courtyard, and they're making that more of a learning environment. And I walked through, they were doing a dissection last week, and just looking for those opportunities to bring the added experiences to kids is
Hmm.
something I think that we do well. Elementary, love the small group instruction. I love going over to the elementary school. I try to get over there and read as much as I can. I need to do better. You can never do that enough. I want to get over there more, but you don't see a lot of whole group instruction. Kids are working at their level. They're going through rotations. The teachers are down with them. Just, I just appreciate that. We're fortunate, very fortunate.
That's actually been a big push of my clients is to look at the small group format and try to figure out a way to, we call it blended learning. Everybody's definition is a little bit different, but this model is, having those stations that are geared towards kids and individual learning to make it more beneficial for them. And I think we're seeing that more and more because of technology. You have some other capabilities, but like you said, it's not the end all be all. You still need that person in front of you. And to have that mix of a little bit of technology so they're familiar versus oh, let's just put them online and just let them figure it out on their own is very different. So
They're still kids.
yeah, exactly. And they need to move. That's been the other piece where I think we got comfortable with letting them sit for too long, and they have to move. They have to be engaging their brain into what they're doing, and kids can't do that just sitting still for 8 hours. So
Right.
it's so important.
Not to sound like Dan Campbell, I am a big Lions fan. Kind of heartbroken still over Washington
Yeah,
last week,
yeah,
but the grit thing, like the whole what grit is and having grit, that's legit. If you want to be successful in life, you got to be able to, dig down. And I feel like it's getting a little more challenging, and you see maybe less grit. So something we really preach is, all right, things aren't going your way right now, but that doesn't mean we just, we're not done, right? We got to
right,
dig down, regroup, let's go, get back
right.
after it.
Well, and that other piece is that it's really hard to know what's going to happen in the future. So you can't prepare students just to be, in a job that may not exist in 10 years. And there's going to be jobs that don't exist now that they'll take over, like a drone pilot. Like when you were in school, we didn't even know what drones were,
Yeah.
so that goes to the grit. Let's just teach you how to learn stuff, no matter what it is, and this way you're adaptable to whatever comes forward. And I think that's what the CTE programs will allow you to do. Yeah, you're training for a skill, but that skill can be carried over to other things. And what is that other thing that we don't even know about yet?
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. Going right back to coaching, the lessons you learn from coaching, not even coaching, but playing, whether you're in a sport, you mentioned band, you mentioned choir, when you're a part of a team, you learn those skills that are going to lead you to being more successful in life.
Without a doubt. And there's always going to be obstacles. There's always going to be things that you just have to deal with and overcome to move forward. And what that looks like for one person could be totally different than somebody else.
Yeah.
So part
Agreed.
of that CTE program is, I stopped asking kids what they want to be when they grow up because who knows? But I started asking them, what did you do today to get you ready for what you think you want to do? Because that's more immediate. And I think that, again, giving those CTE programs, this is what I did today. This is exactly what I did today to help move that forward. Do you see that as a trend in your general education classrooms where they're starting to relate more to the real world versus just, the textbook learning stuff?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's hard, and it makes sense that it's harder when you get to younger kids.
Hmm.
It's just a different environment, but it's all about looking ahead and making those connections and making sure whatever you're doing, why are we doing it? And we're not doing it just to kind of check the box. We're doing it because of this, and then this is going to lead to this. I think those explanations are way more common. The answer used to be because I told you so.
Right.
That answer doesn't fly anymore. I
No, it does
mean,
not.
here's why we're doing it.
Right, exactly. So I'm going to start wrapping things up, and I want to give you a little bit of time. You said already you probably are looking for a third grade teacher.
Yep.
So what other positions may be opening obviously I don't know if they have the paperwork in yet, but due to retirements or whatever else, what positions are you hiring in Summerfield for next year?
Yeah, most likely another special ed teacher. We have a teacher I don't anticipate returning. Um, Most likely a second elementary teacher, upper elementary in this case. So maybe a third, maybe a sixth, maybe a high school special ed, could be a junior high special ed. Right, never enough bus drivers. We can go
Oh,
down that
geez.
road, that rabbit
Yeah,
hole too.
yeah.
But bus drivers, support staff. We have more and more kids in our district and at least across our county with independence facilitators. I mean, some districts call them or some areas paraprofessionals or
Hmm.
at least LRE aides. We are now on the independence facilitator jargon because we like to change
Nice.
what we call things. I know
That's
we'll
an
have them. I know
educational
we'll have
move
bus
right there.
drivers.
That's an educational move. You call the same thing something different, then it has a whole different perspective.
Yeah, just tweak it a little
Yeah,
bit.
exactly. It's awesome.
Yeah. I think really that's probably going to be about it though. I mean, again, we're a smaller district and some things can come up that we're not expecting. I know our athletic director has been very upfront that next year is her last year because she's the one that I told you the story about her
Yeah.
kid graduating and her not moving when
I, she
the
worked in
AD
Dundee
job
for a
is
while
a
too, didn't
hard.
she? She worked in
Yeah,
Dundee.
she did.
Yeah, I know Kelly. She was a lot of fun. She was the food director at the time when I was there.
She sure was. She's amazing.
Yeah, she's
Could
awesome.
not be any more blessed to have Kelly in our district, but I mean, she's given us the heads up. Next year's probably it. I'm not just going to say okay and stop talking about it. We're going to continue the conversation with Kelly, but understanding where she's at and what she values in life, I mean, faith and family, I
hmm
do anticipate it being her last year.
Well, you can tell Kelly that now that her kids are out of the building, she actually will have more time to commit to some things. And we'll give you some time to travel, see your kids, but you have more time at home now. So
Yeah, I'll let you know how that goes.
yeah, I'm sure
I
that will
will
not
try.
go over well. That's not gonna fly. She's a good person and she is very family oriented. So I
Yeah,
can see her saying, "Hey, I'm gonna go see my kids today," and
yeah.
just take off. So that's great that she had that ability. So I'm gonna wrap things up now. I will make sure that that's put out there. And I talked over you when you were saying it, but the athletic director position, it's a critical spot and it's so much time. It's so much time before school, after school, during school to check eligibility and all these other things. It's a thankless job, even though because people you only hear from the community when they complain. You, you,
Really,
you don't hear from them when they're doing well. They don't, hey, here's a box of chocolates because you're doing so well. You don't get that.
no,
No, and
no.
you don't
It's
get
a,
that
it's a
as a
thankless
super.
job.
Yes, it is, and it's a very time heavy job. It's a lot of relationship building. So I just appreciate that. Kelly's a good one. She's a good one. So I'm going to wrap this up, and I will hang with you for a second to talk to you about the CTE programs that I have contacts with, just to give you some insight on things that are happening here in Ohio. So anything else that you want to promote going on in Summerfield before I turn this over?
Nala, come here. Come here. I'll
Uh,
introduce you to Nala quick. Hey, come here. We're
uh-oh.
working on getting a therapy dog.
Oh, that's awesome.
She's sleeping, so forgive her. But come here, baby.
That's a good sign. It's a good therapy dog. Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
look at her.
She goes back to round two of training to get her what I forget what the actual certification is. Canine Good Citizen, I think it begins tonight. So trying to, check all the boxes. She's got to get certified. She has to be a year old, but excited to introduce Nala, especially across the district, but especially at the elementary school.
Yes.
Um, that's definitely going on, and we're excited to bring her to the. I was going to get a bulldog, but I didn't know how well that would go, so we went the Australian Doodle or Aussie Doodle instead. But excited to get her working with kids.
Well, the bulldog wouldn't make it down the hall without drooling on everything, so it's probably a good choice you picked this one.
Right, we played it safe.
Yeah, even though you're a bulldog in Summerfield, it's okay to have a doodle in the hallway.
Yep,
That could be a
yep.
slogan. Doodles in the hallway. It's all good. All right.
It's
So August, thank
roll
you
with it. I
for
like it.
exactly. Thanks for the great conversation today. I wish you the best in the rest of the year and upcoming. Anybody that wants to get more information about August, you can contact me at norm@normpotter.com. Or if you want to find out more about what I offer, in my services, you can contact me at the same email. Check out my YouTube channel and make sure you subscribe from right on this spot, or you can visit my website at structuredcreativityconsulting.com. And until next week, be kind, be professional, and find solutions. Thank you, August.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.